A single moment can reveal what years have hidden. When Ariel Jackson transferred to Westbrook Academy, she carried two things: her grandfather's teachings and a black belt few would ever see. For months, she endured Kendall Anderson's escalating torment, the snide remarks, the academic sabotage, the calculated social isolation that the teachers conveniently ignored. Westbrook's golden boy assumed the quiet black scholarship student would remain an easy target forever. But on that autumn afternoon, as his fingers gripped her collar and phone cameras circled like vultures, something shifted in Ariel's eyes. 3 fluid movements later, the school's untouchable bully lay stunned on the polished floor, and the video that was meant to capture her humiliation instead revealed a truth that would shake Westbrook Academy to its foundations. Just before we get back to it, I'd love to know where you're watching from today, and if you're enjoying these stories, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow's special episode is one you definitely don't want to miss. Ariel stepped off the city bus, clutching the worn straps of her patched-up backpack. The morning sun cast long shadows across the pristine campus of Westbrook Academy, its manicured lawns and red brick buildings more reminiscent of a college than a high school. She scanned the crowds of students filing through the wrought iron gates, immediately noticing what her mother had warned her about. There wasn't a single face that looked like hers. "Keep your head high like Grandpa taught you," her mother whispered, placing a gentle kiss on Ariel's cheek. Though her mother's uniform, crisp white nurse's scrubs, stood out among the expensive suits and dresses of the other parents, she carried herself with quiet dignity. "I know, Mom," Ariel replied, squaring her shoulders. "I'll be fine." As her mother's car pulled away, Ariel took a deep breath and walked through the gates, feeling the weight of dozens of curious stares. Some students quickly averted their eyes when she looked their way, while others whispered behind cupped hands. She'd expected this, but the reality still stung. The marble-floored main hall echoed with the sounds of reuniting friends and locker doors slamming. Ariel followed the printed schedule in her hand, making her way to room 203 for homeroom. When she entered, the chatter briefly died down before resuming at a lower volume. Mrs. Peterson, a thin woman with wire-rimmed glasses and a forced smile, beckoned her forward. "Class, we have a new student joining us this year." She placed a hand on Ariel's shoulder that felt just a touch too stiff. "This is Ariel Jackson. We're proud to welcome more diversity to Westbrook this year." The classroom filled with polite murmurs of greeting, but Ariel caught the uncomfortable glances between friends, the subtle eye rolls from a boy in the back row. She nodded politely and took the only empty seat, near the window in the second-to-last row. "I'm Taylor," whispered the girl beside her, offering a quick smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Welcome to Westbrook." "Thanks," Ariel replied, but Taylor had already turned back to her friend. By lunchtime, Ariel's initial optimism had faded considerably. She'd been called on 3 times in different classes, each time with teachers expressing mild surprise when her answers were correct. In history, Mr. Barnes had asked her if she needed extra help understanding the assignment structure, though she'd been getting straight A's in history since 6th grade. The cafeteria was enormous, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking an Olympic-sized swimming pool. Ariel stood at the entrance, tray in hand, scanning for an empty table. She spotted one and started walking toward it, but as she approached, a blonde girl in a tennis uniform shook her head. "Sorry," the girl said, not looking particularly sorry. "We're saving these seats." Ariel nodded and moved on, eventually finding a table in the corner where she could sit alone. She pulled out a dog-eared copy of The Autobiography of Malcolm X and tried to focus on reading while she ate. "Is this seat taken?" Ariel looked up to find a lanky boy with messy brown hair and glasses standing beside her table. His backpack was covered in hand-drawn superhero logos. "No, go ahead," she said, surprised. "I'm Eli," he said, sitting down and unpacking a lunchbox decorated with comic book characters. "I saw you in Peterson's class. You're Ariel, right?" "Yeah," she nodded. "You like comics?" Eli's face lit up. "I love them. I actually draw my own." He pulled out a sketchbook and slid it across the table. "Not professionally or anything, but I'm working on it." Ariel flipped through pages of surprisingly good illustrations, heroes with complex costumes and expressive faces. These are really good. Thanks, Eli smiled, clearly pleased. I've been working on this character lately. He broke off suddenly, his eyes focusing on something over Ariel's shoulder. His expression fell, and he quickly took his sketchbook back. Ariel turned to see what had caused the change. 3 students were passing by their table, casting dismissive glances their way. The boy in the center was tall and broad-shouldered, with perfectly styled blonde hair and a Letterman jacket. Beside him walked a girl with long, straight brown hair, designer clothes, and an expression of practiced disdain. The third member of their group was another athletic-looking boy, slightly shorter but with the same confident swagger. "Who are they?" Ariel asked quietly after they'd passed. "Kendall Anderson, Bianca Taylor, and Chad Wilson," Eli muttered. "Westbrook royalty. Kendall's dad is on the school board and donates about $1 million a year. Chad's family owns half the real estate in town, and Bianca's mom is some famous fashion designer. Public school project of the year?" Bianca's voice carried across the cafeteria as they walked away, followed by snickers from her companions. Ariel stiffened, but said nothing. A nearby teacher who had clearly heard the comment simply continued checking her phone. "Just ignore them," Eli advised. "They're not worth it." The afternoon brought PE class, and with it, Ariel's first direct confrontation with Chad. The gym teacher, Coach Benson, a barrel-chested former football player with a booming voice, had the class gather around a wrestling mat. "Today we're going to start with some basic grappling techniques," he announced. "Pair off." Students quickly formed pairs, leaving Ariel standing alone. Coach Benson frowned, then pointed at Chad. "Wilson, you're with Jackson." Chad smirked as he approached the mat. "Don't worry," he said loudly enough for others to hear. "I'll go easy on the new girl." Ariel said nothing, taking her position on the mat. She knew exactly how to counter the moves Coach Benson was demonstrating. Her grandfather had taught her far more advanced techniques years ago, but she kept her face neutral. When Coach Benson blew his whistle, Chad lunged forward with unnecessary force. Ariel could have easily sidestepped and used his momentum against him, but instead, she allowed him to grab her arm and flip her onto her back. "Pin," Coach Benson called out, chuckling. "Guess we know who the real athlete is here. Good job, Wilson." Chad held Ariel down a moment longer than necessary, his grip painfully tight. "Welcome to Westbrook," he whispered before releasing her and walking away to high-five Kendall. The rest of the week brought more subtle indignities. In English class, Ariel submitted an analytical essay on "Their Eyes Were Watching God" that her previous school's teacher had praised as college-level work. Ms. Franklin returned it with a B+ and a note that it lacked originality. Meanwhile, Kendall, who had turned in his paper late and had clearly copied sections from online sources, received an A and public praise for his unique voice. When Ariel raised her hand to ask about the grading criteria, Ms. Franklin cut her off. "We have very high standards at Westbrook, Ariel. You'll need to work harder to meet them." By Friday evening, Ariel was emotionally exhausted. She sat at the kitchen table helping her mother prepare dinner, careful to keep her voice steady as she recounted her week. "How was it, really?" her mother asked, setting down her knife and looking directly at Ariel. "It was..." Ariel hesitated, then sighed. "It's tough, Mom. Not academically, but, you know." Her mother nodded, understanding immediately. "I know, baby. I've been the only black nurse on my floor for 15 years. She squeezed Ariel's hand. "Sometimes silence screams louder than shouting, doesn't it?" "Yeah," Ariel agreed quietly, "but I'm handling it." "I'm proud of you," her mother said, returning to chopping vegetables. "Your grades are excellent, just like always. You're going to show them what you're made of." Later that night, Ariel unpacked the last of her moving boxes. At the bottom, wrapped carefully in tissue paper, she found a framed photograph of her grandfather. Master Harold Jackson stood tall in his black GI, his gentle eyes contrasting with his powerful stance. She placed the photo on her desk, running her fingers over the frame. "I miss you, Grandpa," she whispered. Her grandfather had been her first and only martial arts teacher, training her from the age of 5 until his death 3 years ago. Under his guidance, she had earned her black belt by 13, mastering techniques that most adults struggled with, But more importantly, he had taught her when not to use her skills. "You don't fight to hurt," he would tell her during their training sessions. "You fight to protect, and you walk away when it's wise." Ariel had honored that teaching, even when it would have been easier not to. She had remained calm when classmates at her old school tried to provoke her, had walked away from confrontations that could have ended very differently if she'd chosen to fight. But Westbrook was testing her resolve in ways she hadn't anticipated. The following day, while browsing in a small bookstore downtown, Ariel noticed a faded flyer pinned to a community bulletin board. Jackson's traditional martial arts, it read, with an address she recognized as being just a few blocks away. Her grandfather's old dojo. She had almost forgotten it was in this town. That night, after her mother had gone to bed, Ariel slipped out of the house. The streets were quiet as she pedaled her bike through the older part of town, eventually stopping in front of a small single-story building with papered-over windows. The sign above the door was faded but still legible. Jackson's. The door was locked, but Ariel knew where her grandfather kept the spare key, behind a loose brick near the back entrance. The key was still there, covered in dust but functional. The door creaked as she pushed it open, revealing a space frozen in time. Moonlight filtered through the high windows, illuminating the training mats, the weapons rack, the small shrine, with candles and incense that her grandfather had maintained. Everything was covered in a layer of dust, but otherwise untouched since his death. Ariel moved to the small changing room and opened an old locker, her locker. Inside hung her GI and black belt, left behind when they'd moved away after her grandfather died. She changed quickly, the familiar weight of the uniform bringing back a flood of memories. In the main room, she knelt before the faded portrait of her grandfather that hung on the wall, bowing deeply in respect. Then she rose and began to move through the katas he had taught her, slowly at first, then with increasing speed and precision. Each movement was a connection to him, a reminder of his teachings, his voice, his wisdom. For the first time since arriving at Westbrook, Ariel felt centered, powerful, in control. Here, in this dusty, abandoned dojo, she had found a sanctuary. The first month at Westbrook passed in a blur of subtle slights and quiet resistance. Ariel maintained her grades, despite the uneven standards, kept to herself when possible, and found comfort in her nightly visits to the dojo. But the peace she'd managed to maintain was shattered during the September assembly. The entire student body gathered in the auditorium to hear announcements about upcoming events and recognize academic achievements. Ariel sat near the back, beside Eli, half listening as Principal Andrews droned on about maintaining Westbrook's tradition of excellence. When the principal opened the floor for student announcements, Kendall stood up from his front row seat. "I just want to remind everyone about the Fall Festival Planning Committee meeting this Thursday," he said, his voice carrying easily through the space. Then, with a glance back toward where Ariel sat, he added, "And please keep your emotions in check during the planning process. We don't need anyone getting scary when they're angry." Laughter rippled through the audience. Ariel felt dozens of eyes turn toward her, the implication of Kendall's joke clear to everyone. She kept her expression neutral, though her hands tightened into fists in her lap. Ms. Winters, the vice principal, tapped the microphone. "Thank you, Kendall. Let's keep our announcements relevant, please." But there was no admonishment in her tone, only mild amusement. As the assembly dispersed, Ms. Winters caught Ariel by the arm. "A word, please, Ariel." Ariel followed the vice principal to a quiet corner, confused. "I noticed your reaction to Kendall's announcement," Ms. Winters said, her voice low. "I understand you might feel targeted, but we can't have disruptive responses in school assemblies." "I didn't say anything," Ariel protested. "It's not always about what you say," Ms. Winters replied. "Your body language was confrontational. At Westbrook, we expect students to handle uncomfortable situations with grace." Ariel left the conversation feeling both angry and bewildered. Somehow, she had been reprimanded for not reacting to a racial stereotype directed at her. The incident seemed to open the floodgates. The next day, Chad began humming exaggerated kung fu movie music whenever Ariel walked by in the hallways. In chemistry class, Bianca loudly asked her lab partner, "Do you think Ariel practices voodoo or just normal black girl magic?" The question was followed by uncomfortable laughter from students who weren't sure how to respond, but didn't want to challenge Bianca. During lunch a few days later, Chad flicked a spoonful of mashed potatoes onto Eli's drawing as he passed their table. "Oops," Chad smirked. "Guess I'm just clumsy." To Ariel's surprise, Eli stood up, his face flushed with anger. "Shut up, Chad. Just leave us alone." Chad's expression darkened. He knocked Eli's tray off the table, sending food scattering across the floor. "What did you say to me, comic geek?" I said. "Leave us alone," Eli repeated, his voice shaking but determined. Ariel quickly stepped between them, placing a hand on Eli's arm. "It's fine," she said quietly. "Let's just clean this up." As they knelt to pick up the scattered food, Ariel whispered, "Don't fight my battles, Eli. It'll only make things worse for you." "You shouldn't have to fight at all," Eli responded, his eyes serious behind his glasses. "None of this is fair." The situation reached a new low the following week, when Ariel's science project, a complex analysis of urban air quality that she had worked on for weeks, won first place in the class competition, qualifying her for the district science fair. She was elated until 2 days later when she was called to Principal Andrews' office. "There's been a reevaluation of the science projects," the principal informed her, not quite meeting her eyes. "After careful consideration, we've discovered a grading error. Kendall Anderson's project will be representing Westbrook at the district level." "A grading error?" Ariel repeated. "Can I see the new scoring?" "That won't be necessary," Principal Andrews said dismissively. "The decision is final." Later, Ariel overheard 2 teachers discussing how Kendall's mother had called the principal directly to complain about the results. Mrs. Anderson was the head of the Parents Association and a major donor to the school's new athletic complex. In gym class the following day, Coach Benson set up another sparring demonstration. "Jackson Wilson, you're up," he called, a gleam in his eye that suggested he was expecting entertainment. Students gathered around the mat, many whispering excitedly. Chad strutted onto the mat, clearly enjoying the attention. "Maybe you've improved since last time," he taunted. "But I doubt it." Ariel took her stance, muscle memory from years of training automatically positioning her body in perfect form. For a brief moment, she considered showing exactly what she was capable of. How easily she could throw Chad to the mat, how completely she could control the encounter. Instead, she let him grab her arm, feigning resistance but ultimately allowing him to push her down. As she hit the mat, she heard the snickers from the watching students, saw the satisfied smile on Coach Benson's face. "Better luck next time, Jackson," the coach said, marking something on his clipboard. "Some people are natural athletes, and some people just aren't." That night, Ariel dreamed of her grandfather. In the dream, she was younger, maybe 10 or 11, training in the dojo. Master Harold had blindfolded her and was teaching her to block strikes by sensing the movement of air, the subtle shifts in weight and balance that telegraphed an opponent's intentions. The moment you let rage control you, you lose. Even if you win, he told her, his voice calm and certain. True power comes from knowing when to strike and when to wait. Ariel woke with tears on her cheeks, missing her grandfather's guidance more than ever. The next morning, she found a folded note, tucked into the vents of her locker. Opening it cautiously, she read, "Don't trust the school. They cover for him. I can prove it. SP." She glanced around the hallway, wondering who had left the message. The initials seemed familiar, but she couldn't place them immediately. Later that day, she spotted Sophie Parker, a quiet girl who used to sit with Bianca's group but had recently been conspicuously absent from their table, watching her from across the library. When their eyes met, Sophie quickly looked away, but Ariel caught the meaningful glance. Sophie. SP. It had to be her. Growing increasingly frustrated with the situation, Ariel decided to follow proper channels. She made an appointment with Ms. Harrison, the school counselor, hoping to discuss the unfair grading and escalating bullying. Ms. Harrison listened to Ariel's concerns with a sympathetic expression, nodding at appropriate intervals. When Ariel finished speaking, the counselor sighed deeply. "Ariel, I understand your frustration. But you have to understand, we're trying to prepare you for the real world. Life isn't always fair, and learning to navigate these situations is part of growing up." "So you're saying I should just accept being treated differently because of my race?" Ariel asked incredulously. Ms. Harrison's expression hardened slightly. "That's not what I said. I'm saying that Westbrook has certain established dynamics. Kendall and his friends come from families that have supported this school for generations. We have to consider the bigger picture." In that moment, Ariel understood what Sophie's note had meant. The administration wasn't just passive. They were actively protecting their donors' children, maintaining a system that kept students like Ariel at a disadvantage, no matter how hard she worked or how, well, she performed. That night, Ariel returned to the dojo, her emotions raw and churning. She moved through her katas with angry precision, each strike and block fueled by the day's frustrations. Her movements became faster, more powerful, until she found herself standing before a stack of bricks her grandfather had used for breaking demonstrations. Her hand hovered above the top brick, trembling with the effort of restraint. How satisfying it would be to shatter it, to release even a fraction of the anger building inside her. Instead, she lowered her hand, tears streaming down her face. In the small shrine area, Ariel opened the wooden box where her grandfather had kept his most prized possessions. Inside lay his original black belt, worn and faded from decades of use. She lifted it reverently, feeling the weight of his legacy in her hands. After a moment's hesitation, she tied it around her waist, replacing her own newer belt. It would remain hidden under her school uniform, a secret reminder of her strength, her heritage, her true self. A silent vow. Only when there's no other option. The halls of Westbrook Academy had never felt more hostile. Ariel walked with her head high, her grandfather's black belt hidden beneath her uniform like armor. But the weight of isolation grew heavier each day. 2 months into the semester, everything changed with a single notification on her phone. "Ariel, have you seen it?" Eli rushed up to her locker, his face flushed with anger. "The video they posted?" "What video?" Ariel asked, her stomach tightening with dread. Eli hesitated, then reluctantly held up his phone. On screen was a compilation of short clips, each showing Ariel in class or hallways. They'd been carefully edited to make her appear aggressive. Her face when Chad had knocked into her deliberately, her expression when a teacher had ignored her raised hand, moments of frustration taken out of context. The caption read simply, "Angry Ariel." "It's all over the school's social pages," Eli said quietly. "Kendall posted it last night." Ariel stared at the screen, her face carefully blank despite the fury building inside her. She'd done everything right, kept her head down, followed the rules, walked away from provocations. Now they had twisted her restraint into something ugly. "Who filmed this?" she asked, her voice steadier than she felt. "Bianca, mostly. She's always on her phone in class." Before Ariel could respond, a voice came over the PA system. "Ariel, Jackson, please report to the principal's office immediately." Students in the hallway turned to stare, some smirking, others looking away uncomfortably. Ariel handed Eli's phone back to him and walked calmly toward the office, feeling dozens of eyes on her back. Principal Andrews was waiting, his expression severe. Vice Principal Winters stood beside him, arms crossed. "Sit down, Ariel, Principal," Andrews said, gesturing to the chair in front of his desk. He turned his monitor toward her, showing the same video. "Would you care to explain this?" "Explain what?" Ariel asked. "I didn't make that video." "We're concerned about the aggressive behavior displayed here," Ms. Winters interjected. "Several students have expressed that they feel unsafe." Ariel stared at them in disbelief. "That video is edited to make me look angry. None of that is what actually happened." "Nevertheless," Principal Andrews continued, "we're considering a suspension until this situation de-escalates. We can't have students feeling threatened at Westbrook." "Threatened?" Ariel repeated. I haven't done anything to anyone. Perception matters, Ms. Jackson, the principal replied. And the perception is that you have an anger management issue. The injustice of it all left Ariel momentarily speechless. They were punishing her for a manufactured problem while ignoring the real harassment she had endured for months. As she left the office, a hand reached out from the empty classroom next door and pulled her inside. Startled, Ariel automatically shifted into a defensive stance before recognizing Sophie Parker. "Sorry," Sophie whispered, glancing nervously toward the door. "I needed to talk to you privately." She pressed a small flash drive into Ariel's palm. "This proves the video is fake. It has the unedited footage from school security cameras. You can see what really happened in each of those moments." Ariel stared at the drive. "How did you get this?" "I used to help in the office during study hall. I have access to the security archive." Sophie's eyes darted to the door again. "Use it before they delete everything. Kendall's dad called the school board this morning." "Why are you helping me?" Ariel asked. Sophie hesitated. "Because I know what they're like, what they've done to others." She opened the door a crack, checking the hallway. "I have to go. Be careful who you trust." Skeptical but desperate, Ariel showed the flash drive to Eli during lunch. They found an empty computer lab and plugged it in. "Look," Eli pointed at the screen. "This shows the full context of every clip they used." He clicked through several files. "Here's where Chad deliberately knocked into you, and here's where Bianca was mocking you behind your back. They cut all that out." "We need to send this to the counselor," Ariel decided. "They can't ignore video evidence." Eli helped her compose an email to Ms. Harrison, attaching the key video files. They sent it from Ariel's school account, then waited for a response. But when Ariel went to the counselor's office the next day, Ms. Harrison seemed confused. "What email are you referring to, Ariel? I didn't receive anything from you." "I sent it yesterday," Ariel insisted. "It had video files showing that Kendall's video was edited." Ms. Harrison clicked through, her inbox shaking her head. "There's nothing here. Are you sure you sent it to the right address?" When Ariel checked her sent folder later, the email was gone, as if it had never existed. That afternoon, as Ariel was gathering books from her locker, Bianca approached, flanked by two of her friends. For once, Kendall and Chad were nowhere in sight. "Hey, Ariel," Bianca said, her voice unexpectedly friendly. "I just wanted to say I thought your presentation in English was really good yesterday." Caught off guard, Ariel muttered a cautious, "Thanks." "We're having a study group for the midterm next week," Bianca continued. "You should join us." Before Ariel could respond, Bianca suddenly stepped forward, shoving her hard against the lockers. "Oops! Didn't see you there," she said loudly, as Ariel stumbled to regain her balance. A group of students nearby laughed, and Ariel noticed several phones pointed their way, recording. Another setup. "You know what, Bianca?" Ariel said quietly. "I feel sorry for you." Bianca's smile faltered, but she quickly recovered and walked away with a dismissive hair flip. The final straw came. The following day, Ariel was leaving the cafeteria after lunch when Kendall stepped directly into her path, flanked by Chad and several other members of the lacrosse team. A circle of students quickly formed around them, sensing the confrontation to come. "I don't like your attitude," Kendall said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "You walk around here like you own the place." Ariel tried to step around him. "I'm just trying to get to class." Kendall moved to block her again. "I'm not done talking to you." Without warning, he reached out and grabbed her collar, dragging her forward. "You need to learn some respect." Time seemed to slow down. Ariel was acutely aware of the crowd watching, phones recording, teachers conveniently absent. She heard her grandfather's voice in her head. "Control. Precision. End it before it begins." For 2 months, she had endured every insult, every slight, every injustice. She had followed the rules, trusted the system, walked away when provoked. And where had it gotten her? Facing expulsion for a crime she didn't commit, manhandled in front of the entire school, her dignity in tatters. There would be no walking away from this. In a fluid motion so quick that most onlookers missed the details, Ariel twisted Kendall's wrist, breaking his grip on her collar. She swept his legs with a precise kick, dropping him to the ground with controlled force. Before he could react, she had him pinned, her knee pressing lightly on his chest, her hand positioned to immobilize but not harm. She held him for just 2 seconds, long enough to make her point, then released him and stepped back, her posture relaxed but ready. The hallway went completely silent. Kendall lay on the ground, the shock on his face quickly morphing to humiliation and rage. Chad started to step forward, but stopped dead when Ariel turned her gaze toward him. Something in her eyes made him reconsider. She's trained, someone whispered in the silence, the words carrying clearly through the stunned crowd. Kendall scrambled to his feet, his face flushed with anger. "You're done at this school," he spat, backing away. "My father will make sure of it." Ariel said nothing, simply watching as he retreated, the crowd parting to let him through. She picked up her backpack from where it had fallen and continued walking to class, her heart pounding but her steps steady. By the time the final bell rang, the video of the takedown was already circulating. Unlike the manufactured angry Ariel video, this one needed no editing to make its impact. In just 3 moves, Ariel had exposed Kendall's bullying and demonstrated her own skill and restraint. As she walked to the bus stop, her phone buzzed with a text from her mother. "Principal's office, 9 a.m. tomorrow. Formal hearing." "What happened?" Ariel sighed, knowing the battle ahead would be the hardest yet. But for the first time in months, she walked with her head truly high, no longer carrying the burden of silent endurance. That evening, her phone lit up with notifications as the video spread beyond Westbrook, picking up views across social media platforms. By midnight, it had been shared by several martial arts pages with captions like, "Private school girl silently ends bully with 3 moves." Ariel turned off her phone and went to the dojo, needing the peace of that sacred space. As she practiced, her katas in the moonlight, she felt no regret for what she had done, only a strange sense of clarity. Whatever came next, she would face it with the same control and precision she had shown today. The lines had been drawn. The truth was out there now, recorded and witnessed. And for better or worse, Westbrook Academy would never be the same. Ariel arrived at Westbrook the next morning to find news vans parked along the street and reporters clustered near the main entrance. Her mother walked beside her, hand protectively on her shoulder, face set in a determined expression. "Keep walking," her mother murmured. "Don't answer any questions." "Ariel, can you tell us what led to the confrontation?" "Mrs. Jackson, does your daughter have martial arts training? Were there previous incidents of bullying at Westbrook?" The questions followed them up the walkway until a security guard ushered them inside, closing the door on the media frenzy. Principal Andrews was waiting in the main hall, his face grave. "This way, please," he said tersely, leading them to the conference room rather than his office. Inside, Ariel was surprised to find not just the vice principal and counselor, but the entire disciplinary board, 8 people, including 2 teachers she recognized, and several adults in business attire, who must be board members. Kendall's father, a tall man with the same blonde hair and sharp features as his son, sat at one end of the table, his expression thunderous. "Please be seated," Principal Andrews instructed. "This is a formal disciplinary hearing regarding yesterday's violent incident." "Violent incident?" Ariel's mother repeated, her voice dangerously calm. "My daughter defended herself against a student who physically assaulted her. That's documented in the video everyone's seen." "Mrs. Jackson," Mr. Anderson cut in. "Your daughter used martial arts techniques on my son. She could have seriously injured him. That constitutes a threat to student safety." Principal Andrews nodded solemnly. "I'm afraid I have to agree. Pending the outcome of this investigation, Ariel is suspended effective immediately. We consider her a threat to the safety of others." Ariel's mother stood up, her nurse's uniform crisp against the polished wood of the conference table. "My daughter has been subjected to months of harassment at this school. She has documented evidence of bullying that the administration has repeatedly ignored. And now, when she defends herself against physical assault, you suspend her?" "We take all allegations of bullying seriously," Ms. Winters said smoothly. "Do you?" Ariel spoke for the first time. Because I have evidence that proves otherwise. Mr. Anderson's laugh was dismissive. I'm sure you think you do. Ariel, Principal Andrews said, his tone patronizing. We understand you may feel victimized, but your response was disproportionate and dangerous. The board's decision is final, Ms. Winters added. You may gather your belongings and leave campus immediately. We'll be in touch regarding the terms of your suspension and potential expulsion hearing. Outside the conference room, Ariel and her mother found Eli waiting anxiously. What happened? He asked. I'm suspended, Ariel said quietly. Pending possible expulsion. Eli's face fell. That's not fair. Everyone saw what really happened. When has fairness ever mattered here? Ariel replied, too tired to be bitter. As they walked toward Ariel's locker, other students stopped to watch. Some looked sympathetic, others wary, a few openly hostile. The divisions were already forming. Ariel, a voice called. Sophie Parker hurried toward them, looking nervously over her shoulder. I heard what happened. I'm so sorry. Not your fault, Ariel said. Actually, it kind of is, Sophie admitted. I should have spoken up sooner. She took a deep breath. I want to help now, though. I have more evidence, not just about yesterday, but about other incidents. Kendall's done this before to other students who ended up leaving Westbrook. Ariel's mother looked at Sophie with newfound interest. What kind of evidence? Recorded conversations, screenshots, a journal I kept when I was dating him. Sophie looked down. I know what he's really like. Why come forward now? Ariel asked. Because you stood up to him, Sophie said simply. No one's ever done that before. Outside, the media presence had doubled. Reporters surged forward as Ariel and her mother emerged from the building, bombarding them with questions. This time, though, they had a statement prepared. My daughter defended herself against a documented assault, Mrs. Jackson said clearly. Westbrook Academy has fostered a culture of bullying and discrimination, and their response today proves it. We will be pursuing all available remedies to this injustice. By evening, the story had gone national. Local news led with elite private school suspends student who defended herself against bully, while social media exploded with hashtags like Justice for Ariel and Westbrook Bullies. But alongside the support came ugliness. Anonymous accounts flooded Ariel's inboxes with racist messages. Some commenters claimed she'd overreacted or was playing the race card. A particularly vile post called her dangerous and aggressive, perpetuating the very stereotypes Kendall's crew had tried to pin on her. Don't read the comments, her mother advised, taking Ariel's phone and closing the social media apps. Those people don't know you. Half the town is supporting Kendall, Ariel said, gesturing to the TV where a local news segment showed parents gathering outside Westbrook with signs reading, "Safety first," and "No violence at school." And the other half is standing with you, her mother reminded her, changing the channel to show a different group of protesters with signs saying, "Justice for Ariel" and "End elite immunity." The doorbell rang, and Ariel's mother went to answer it. She returned with Eli, and to Ariel's surprise, 5 other Westbrook students, including Sophie. We formed a group, Eli explained, looking both nervous and determined. Students Against Bullying. We're organizing a peaceful protest tomorrow morning. You shouldn't risk your standing at school, Ariel protested. It's worth it, a tall girl named Jasmine said firmly. What happened to you isn't right, and it's not just about you. They've been protecting Kendall and his friends for years. They've been coming to my place all afternoon, Sophie added. I've been showing them the evidence I collected. It's pretty damning. As the students discussed their plans, Ariel's mother pulled her aside. There's something I need to tell you, she said quietly. Something I should have shared a long time ago. They went to the kitchen, where her mother pulled out a folder from a high cabinet. When I was in my first year as a nurse, she began, a wealthy patient accused me of stealing her medication. It wasn't true. She had taken extra doses and forgotten. But the hospital immediately put me on leave. They were ready to fire me without investigation. She opened the folder, revealing legal documents and newspaper clippings. I fought back. I got a lawyer, gathered evidence, and took them to court. It was hard and lonely, and terrifying. But I won. Ariel looked at her mother with new understanding. Why didn't you ever tell me? I wanted to protect you from knowing how unfair the world can be, her mother admitted. But I see now that was wrong. You've been walking this path alone just like I did. She took Ariel's hands. Not anymore. The doorbell rang again. This time, when Mrs. Jackson opened it, she found a well-dressed black woman in her 50s, carrying a leather briefcase. Mrs. Jackson? I'm Vanessa Marks, attorney at law. She smiled warmly. I believe we have some matters to discuss. Ariel joined them in the living room as Ms. Marks explained her connection. I studied under your grandfather at his dojo when I was 13. Master Harold helped me find my voice when I was a scared kid facing my own battles with racism. She opened her briefcase. I'd like to represent you pro bono. It's time I returned. The favor. As they discussed legal strategies, Ariel felt a strange sense of calm. For months, she had carried the burden alone, believing that quiet dignity was her only weapon. Now suddenly, she had allies, not just her mother and Ms. Marks, but Eli, Sophie, and other students willing to stand with her. The next morning, Eli texted with alarming news. Sophie had tried to access the school's disciplinary records to retrieve files showing previous cover-ups of Kendall's behavior, only to discover that her login had been revoked and the records altered. They're deleting evidence, his message read. But don't worry, I backed everything up last night. Meanwhile, Ms. Marks had uncovered something equally disturbing, a pattern of similar incidents at Westbrook over the past decade, all quietly resolved when students from less privileged backgrounds mysteriously transferred out mid-year. They've been sweeping these problems under the rug for years, Ms. Marks explained, as she laid out documents on the kitchen table. But this time, they picked the wrong student to mess with. That evening, Ariel learned that an emergency board meeting had been called at Westbrook. According to Sophie's sources, Kendall's father was demanding Ariel's immediate expulsion to protect the school's prestige. But some of the board members are hesitating, Sophie reported over the phone. The media attention has them worried about optics, and a few of them have actually watched the unedited videos. After everyone had left, Ariel returned to the dojo. The space had become her refuge, the one place where she could be fully herself. As she practiced in silence, a thunderstorm broke outside, rain lashing against the windows. Lightning illuminated the room in brief, brilliant flashes, casting dramatic shadows as she moved through complex katas with fluid precision. In those moments, Ariel found clarity. She had spent months trying to be invisible, to navigate a hostile environment without making waves. She had followed her grandfather's teaching about walking away, but perhaps she had misinterpreted his wisdom. Sometimes walking away meant retreat. But sometimes it meant moving forward on a different path. This time, she whispered to the empty dojo as thunder shook the building. I'm not just fighting for me. The lightning flashed again, illuminating the portrait of her grandfather on the wall. In that brief, electric moment, Ariel could have sworn he was smiling. The morning of the disciplinary hearing dawned clear and cold. Ariel stood before her bedroom mirror, adjusting the collar of the modest navy blazer her mother had insisted on buying for the occasion. It wasn't her style, but she understood the strategy. Appear professional, composed, unthreatening. Ready? Her mother asked from the doorway. Ariel nodded, tucking her grandfather's worn black belt into her bag. She wouldn't wear it today, but having it close gave her strength. They arrived at Westbrook Academy to find the parking lot filled with news vans and protesters. Two distinct groups had formed, one supporting Kendall, mostly parents in expensive clothing holding signs about school safety, and another, larger group supporting Ariel, a diverse mix of students, community members, and martial arts practitioners from neighboring towns. Ms. Marks met them at the side entrance, immaculately dressed in a tailored suit, her expression confident. Remember what we discussed, she told Ariel, as they walked toward the administration building. Let me do most of the talking. Stay calm regardless of what's said. Your composure is our greatest asset. The hearing was being held in the school's boardroom, a wood-paneled space with portraits of past principals lining the walls. The disciplinary committee sat at a long table at the front. Principal Andrews, Vice Principal Winters, 2 teachers, and 3 board members. Off to the side sat a stenographer, ready to record the proceedings. Kendall and his father entered from a side door moments later. Kendall's arm was in a sling, a theatrical touch, Ariel noted, since she hadn't injured him in any way. He cast a smug glance in her direction before taking his seat, confident in his family's influence. "This hearing will now come to order," announced Dr. Russell, the head of the school board, a stern-looking woman with silver hair. "We are here to address the physical altercation that occurred between students Kendall Anderson and Ariel Jackson. Based on our findings, the board will determine appropriate disciplinary action." Principal Andrews spoke first, framing the incident as a violent outburst that endangered student safety. He carefully avoided mentioning what had led up to the confrontation, focusing solely on Ariel's response. When Kendall was called to testify, he played his role perfectly, the injured victim, voice appropriately subdued. "I was just trying to talk to her," he claimed, adjusting his unnecessary sling. "She's been having trouble fitting in, and as senior class president, I felt responsible for helping her adjust." He paused for effect. "Then she just attacked me. No warning. She used some kind of martial arts move. I could have been seriously hurt." His friends backed his story when called, though Ariel noticed how their accounts differed in small but significant ways. Chad claimed Kendall had barely touched her shoulder before she reacted, while another lacrosse team member insisted there had been no physical contact at all before Ariel's supposed attack. Ms. Marks made note of each inconsistency, her pen moving steadily across her legal pad. When it was their turn, Ms. Marks rose with deliberate calm. "Before my client speaks, I'd like to present some evidence." She approached the table with a flash drive. "This contains the complete unedited security footage of the incident in question." Principal Andrews shifted uncomfortably. "We've already reviewed the relevant footage." "Have you?" Ms. Marks raised an eyebrow. "The complete footage, including the 10 minutes prior to the physical contact? I think the committee would benefit from seeing exactly what transpired." After some reluctant discussion among the board members, they agreed to view the video. The lights dimmed as the footage played on a large screen. Unlike the viral cell phone videos that had captured only the final confrontation, the security camera showed everything. Kendall and his friends following Ariel from the cafeteria, blocking her path multiple times as she tried to walk away. And finally, unmistakably clear, Kendall grabbing her collar and yanking her forward. Only then did Ariel respond with the controlled takedown. When the lights came back on, the room had fallen into an uneasy silence. Even some committee members looked visibly uncomfortable. "As you can see," Ms. Marks said into the silence, "my client was physically assaulted first. She responded with minimal force to protect herself, then immediately disengaged. This was textbook self-defense." Mr. Anderson leaned forward. "My son made a mistake, I admit that. But he didn't use martial arts techniques. The response was disproportionate." "Disproportionate?" Ms. Marks echoed. "Your son is considerably larger than my client, was backed by several friends, and initiated physical contact by grabbing her clothing. Ms. Jackson used precisely the amount of force needed to end the confrontation safely. No one was injured." The board members exchanged glances. This wasn't going as they had expected. "We have another matter to address," Ms. Marks continued. "A pattern of harassment directed at Ms. Jackson since her arrival at Westbrook, which the administration has systematically ignored." Principal Andrews' face hardened. "That's a serious accusation, Ms. Marks, which I am prepared to substantiate." She produced a thick folder. "I have documented incidents of racial harassment, academic discrimination, and physical intimidation. I also have evidence that Ms. Jackson attempted to report these incidents through proper channels, only to be dismissed, or, in some cases, blamed for the problems." The testimony continued for another hour, with Sophie's written statement providing a damning account of the school's pattern of protecting certain students at the expense of others. Though submitted anonymously, her detailed knowledge of specific incidents left little doubt about the truth of her claims. I've been instructed to keep my identity confidential, her statement concluded, because I fear retaliation from the school and certain students. But everything I've described can be verified through security footage, email records, and witness accounts, if the board is willing to look. When Bianca Williams was called to testify, the committee expected another, rehearsed account supporting Kendall. Instead, they found a nervous young woman who couldn't maintain eye contact. "Bianca, did you witness the altercation between Kendall and Ariel?" Dr. Russell asked. "Yes," Bianca replied, her voice barely audible. "And can you describe what you saw?" Bianca glanced toward Kendall, who was glaring at her, then to Ariel, who simply waited with calm dignity. Something in that contrast seemed to affect her. Kendall grabbed her, Bianca admitted finally. "He's done it before to other people. We were told to keep things quiet." "Told by whom?" Ms. Marks asked sharply. "I can't," Bianca began, then stopped herself. "By Principal Andrews and Coach Benson. They said it would hurt the school's reputation if we talked about these things." The revelation sent a ripple through the room. Principal Andrews's face flushed with anger, but before he could speak, Dr. Russell cut in. "Thank you, Bianca. You may step down." Finally, it was Ariel's turn to speak. She approached the table with the same calm control she'd shown throughout the hearing. "My grandfather taught me martial arts from the age of 5, she began. "But the most important lesson he taught me wasn't about fighting. It was about restraint, about using skill to diffuse conflict, not escalate it." She looked directly at the committee members. "For months, I endured harassment at this school. I reported it through proper channels. I trusted the system to work. It didn't." She turned, slightly to face Kendall. "When you grabbed me that day, I had a choice. I chose the minimum response necessary to protect myself. I didn't hurt you, though I could have. I ended the confrontation quickly and safely, then walked away." Back to the committee. "That's everything my grandfather taught me about the responsible use of martial arts." The hearing adjourned with the committee promising to deliberate and deliver their decision within 24 hours. As Ariel left the building with her mother and Ms. Marks, the crowd of supporters erupted in applause. "You did wonderfully," Ms. Marks told her. "Now we wait." The waiting proved more difficult than the hearing itself. Ariel tried to distract herself with homework, but found it impossible to focus. Instead, she headed to the dojo, finding peace in the familiar movements of her katas. Later that evening, as she walked home in the fading light, a car pulled alongside her. The window rolled down to reveal Bianca in the passenger seat, her mother driving. "Can we talk?" Bianca asked, her usual confidence nowhere in evidence. "Just for a minute?" Ariel hesitated, then nodded. Bianca got out of the car and walked a few steps away for privacy. "I know I owe you a real apology," Bianca began. "And this isn't it, not yet. But I wanted you to know." She pulled an envelope from her jacket pocket. "I thought we were untouchable. I was wrong." She handed Ariel the envelope. Inside was a printed email exchange between Principal Andrews and Kendall's father, discussing how to manage the situation with Ariel to protect the school's reputation and the Anderson family's standing. "Where did you get this?" Ariel asked. "My mom is on the school board," Bianca replied. "She was copied on some of these emails. She didn't know I took them." She glanced back at the car. "She's furious about what's been happening. A lot of parents are." Indeed, while Ariel had been in the dojo, a different kind of demonstration had formed outside the school. Eli's mother, a professor at the local community college, had organized a group of parents demanding accountability. Their signs read, "Justice for Ariel" and "End Elite Immunity." The next morning brought news that sent shockwaves through the Westbrook community. Under mounting pressure, Principal Andrews had issued a statement defending the administration's actions as in good faith efforts to maintain a positive learning environment. However, within hours, Ms. Marks had leaked a series of emails to the local newspaper that directly contradicted this claim, showing that the principal had been aware of Kendall's pattern of behavior for years and had actively covered it up. By noon, Resign Andrews was trending locally on social media. By evening, the school board announced he would be taking administrative leave, pending further investigation. That weekend, Ariel decided to officially reopen her grandfather's dojo for limited classes. With Eli's help, she cleaned the space, repaired broken equipment, and put up a small sign in the window. Jackson's Traditional Martial Arts, Self-Defense Basics, Saturdays 10 a.m. To her surprise, 6 students showed up for the first class: Eli, Sophie, and 4 other Westbrook students who had reached out after the hearing. Ariel began with the most fundamental lessons her grandfather had taught her, not just about technique, but about philosophy. "You don't train to hurt others," she told them as they practiced basic stances. "You train to protect yourself and those who cannot protect themselves. The goal is never to fight. It's to be so centered and prepared that fighting becomes unnecessary." As public sentiment continued to shift in Ariel's favor, national media outlets picked up the story. No longer framed as a troublemaker, Ariel was now portrayed as a disciplined young woman standing up against systemic bullying and discrimination. An online petition demanding her reinstatement with a formal apology had gathered over 100,000 signatures. But Kendall wasn't finished. Humiliated by the turn of events and furious at losing his untouchable status, he lashed out in a final desperate act. Security cameras at the dojo captured him late one night, spray painting racial slurs across the front window and damaging equipment inside. The footage, automatically uploaded to a cloud server, was in Ms. Marks's hands by morning. By afternoon, it was in the hands of the police. Kendall's fate was sealed by his own actions, the last desperate thrashing of a drowning reputation. The pressure on Westbrook Academy continued to mount. With Principal Andrews on leave and evidence of systematic misconduct piling up, the district superintendent announced an independent investigation. Ms. Marks insisted that Ariel be allowed to testify before the full school board, with media present. "This isn't just about getting you back in school," Ms. Marks explained as they prepared. "This is about changing a broken system. Your voice can make that happen." The night before her testimony, Ariel dreamed of her grandfather. They were in the dojo, as they had been countless times during her childhood. She was young again, perhaps 9 or 10, struggling with a difficult sequence. "I can't do it, Grandpa," she complained. Master Harold knelt to her level, his kind eyes meeting hers. "Your fist is strong, Ariel, but your voice," he touched her throat gently. "Your voice is stronger. Some battles cannot be won with strikes and blocks." She woke with tears on her cheeks, but a clarity that had been missing before. This wasn't just about her reinstatement or Kendall's punishment. It was about speaking truth to a system that had silenced too many for too long. The day of the board meeting, Ariel worked with Eli and Sophie to prepare her statement. She struggled initially, torn between expressing her genuine pain and avoiding sounding bitter or vengeful. "Just tell your story," Sophie advised. "Not just what happened, but how it felt. Make them understand. And remember," Eli added, "this isn't just for you. It's for anyone who's ever been bullied or ignored." The board meeting was held in the school auditorium to accommodate the crowd. Every seat was filled: students, parents, teachers, community members, and media. Ariel sat between her mother and Ms. Marks, conscious of the eyes upon her but no longer intimidated by the attention. Dr. Russell opened the proceedings with a formal acknowledgement of the seriousness of the situation. "Westbrook Academy has always prided itself on excellence and integrity," she said. "Recent events have called those values into question. We are here to listen, to learn, and to chart a path forward that upholds the highest standards of education and equity." When Ariel was called to speak, she approached the podium with measured steps. She wore her GI jacket over dress pants, a deliberate choice to honor her heritage and training. The black belt around her waist was visible to all, no longer hidden. "My name is Ariel Jackson," she began, her voice steady. "I came to Westbrook Academy because of its academic reputation. I believed it would prepare me for college and beyond. What I found instead was a place where some students are protected while others are left vulnerable, where truth depends on whose truth it is, and where silence is the price of belonging." She detailed her experiences without embellishment: the daily microaggressions, the academic discrimination, the escalating harassment. She described her attempts to use proper channels and how those attempts were dismissed or turned against her. I was raised by a single mother who taught me the value of hard work and dignity, she continued. And I was trained by my grandfather, Master Harold Jackson, who taught me that martial arts is not about fighting. It's about harmony, self-control, and justice. She looked directly at the board members. When Kendall Anderson grabbed me that day, I had already endured months of harassment. I had reported it. I had followed your rules. I had trusted your system. None of that protected me, so I protected myself, using exactly the amount of force necessary to end the confrontation safely. Her voice grew stronger. The problem at Westbrook isn't that I defended myself. The problem is that I shouldn't have had to. The problem is a culture that enabled bullying and punished the bullied. The problem is adults who looked the other way because it was easier than standing up for what's right. She gestured to the audience. Look around this room. There are students here who have been silenced, parents who have been misled, teachers who have been pressured to maintain a false image of harmony. We all deserve better. As she concluded, the auditorium erupted in applause. Even some board members were nodding in agreement. The tide had turned completely. The following days brought a cascade of changes. Principal Andrews, facing termination, submitted his resignation. Several staff members followed, including Coach Benson and Ms. Winters. The board announced a comprehensive review of all disciplinary procedures and the establishment of an independent ethics committee to handle future complaints. Kendall's expulsion, when it came, was almost anticlimactic. The vandalism of the dojo, captured clearly on security footage, made his position untenable even to his most steadfast defenders. His father withdrew his substantial donations in protest, publicly blaming cancel culture rather than acknowledging his son's actions. Mr. Anderson gave an angry interview to the local news station, claiming his family had been targeted and that the school had caved to pressure. Few were sympathetic. The board appointed Dr. Maya Williams, a respected black educator from a neighboring district, as interim principal with a mandate to transform the school culture. Her first official act was to reinstate Ariel with a formal apology and to implement mandatory training on diversity, equity, and inclusion for all staff and students. Westbrook has an opportunity to become a model for how schools can address these issues honestly and constructively, Dr. Williams stated in her first address to the student body. The excellence we strive for must include excellence of character and community. For Ariel, returning to school brought mixed emotions. There were awkward encounters and lingering tensions, but also a palpable shift in the atmosphere. Students who had previously ignored her now stopped to talk. Teachers who had dismissed her now sought her input. The change wasn't universal or perfect, but it was real. Perhaps most surprising was Bianca's transformation. Having witnessed the consequences of complicity, she approached Ariel after class one day. "I've been thinking a lot about everything," she said hesitantly. "About why I went along with Kendall for so long." She took a deep breath. "I was afraid of losing my place, my status. It seemed so important then." "And now?" Ariel asked. "Now, I see how hollow it was." Bianca looked genuinely regretful. "I'm sorry, Ariel, for everything. I know that doesn't fix it, but I want you to know that I'm trying to be better." Ariel considered her words. "Actions speak louder than apologies," she said finally, "but I appreciate you saying it." In the weeks that followed, Bianca backed up her words with actions, using her social influence to support the changes at Westbrook rather than resist them. She started an anti-cyberbullying initiative and publicly acknowledged her past role in creating a toxic environment. Meanwhile, the dojo had become something of a symbol in the community. Ariel continued teaching weekend classes, now with a growing roster of students. The space that had once been her private sanctuary became a place of learning and community. As her story spread, Ariel received invitations to speak at other schools about bullying, self-defense, and the martial arts philosophy. A producer from a national daytime talk show reached out, wanting her to appear as a guest to demonstrate self-defense moves and discuss her experience. The attention was overwhelming at times, but Ms. Marks helped her navigate it. "You have a platform now," she advised. "Use it wisely, use it selectively, and always stay true to your grandfather's teachings." One evening, as Ariel practiced alone in the dojo, she heard a familiar voice. "Your form has improved." She turned to find her mother watching from the doorway, smiling softly. "Grandpa would be proud." "I hope so," Ariel said, wiping sweat from her brow. "Sometimes I wonder if this is what he meant, using martial arts to change things, not just to defend myself." "Your grandfather believed that true strength comes from within," her mother said, stepping into the room and adjusting Ariel's stance slightly, a gesture that transported them both back to when Master Harold would do the same. "He taught you to fight when necessary, but he also taught you to speak truth to power. You're doing both." As her mother left, Ariel continued her practice, moving through the complex forms with fluid precision. The past months had transformed her, just as she had helped transform Westbrook. The journey wasn't over. True change never happened overnight. But the path forward was clearer now. In the quiet of the dojo, surrounded by the legacy of her grandfather and the promise of her own emerging voice, Ariel found a moment of perfect balance, the harmony between strength and compassion, between fighting and healing, between standing alone and leading others. This was the true heart of all her grandfather had taught her, and it would guide her through whatever challenges lay ahead. Spring arrived at Westbrook Academy with a sense of renewal that matched the season. 3 months had passed since the board meeting, and while the memory of those events remained vivid, the raw emotions had begun to soften. For Ariel, the journey now turned inward, toward healing the wounds that lay beneath the surface. It began with a gentle suggestion from her mother. "I think you might benefit from talking to someone," she said one evening as they washed dishes together. "Someone professional." Ariel bristled initially. "I'm fine, Mom. Everything worked out." Her mother dried a plate slowly, choosing her words with care. "Being strong doesn't mean handling everything alone. That's something I had to learn the hard way." The next day, a business card appeared on Ariel's desk. Dr. Lydia Foster, a therapist specializing in trauma and racial identity. Ariel tucked it into her journal, not quite ready to make the call, but not rejecting the idea either. A week later, after waking from a vivid dream where she was fighting shadowy opponents who kept multiplying no matter how many she defeated, she finally dialed the number. Dr. Foster's office was warm and inviting, with plants in every corner, and art from around the world adorning the walls. The therapist herself, a middle-aged black woman with kind eyes and a direct manner, put Ariel at ease almost immediately. "So," Dr. Foster said after they'd exchanged pleasantries, "tell me, what brings you here today?" Ariel had prepared a concise summary of recent events, the bullying, the confrontation, the hearing. But what emerged instead was a flood of emotions she hadn't allowed herself to feel. Anger at the injustice, grief over her grandfather's absence when she needed his guidance most, shame at having finally lost control, fear that she might have disappointed him. "I should have handled it better," she concluded, wiping away unexpected tears. "I should have found another way." "Should you?" Dr. Foster asked simply. "Or is that what others expected of you?" That question lingered as they began weekly sessions. Ariel gradually unpacked the weight she had carried, not just from recent months, but from years of navigating spaces where she was the only black person, always feeling the pressure to be twice as good while appearing half as threatening. "You've been carrying so much," Dr. Foster observed during their third session. "Where do you put it all down?" The answer came unexpectedly. The dojo. With community support and a small grant from a local foundation, Ariel had fully restored her grandfather's space. Fresh paint covered the walls, new mats lined the floor, and on weekends the sound of students training filled the once empty rooms. Ariel began offering free classes specifically for kids who had experienced bullying. Many came with hunched shoulders and downcast eyes, postures she recognized all too well. Through basic techniques and confidence-building exercises, she watched them gradually stand taller, speak louder, move with greater assurance. My grandfather always said that martial arts isn't about making yourself powerful, she told them. It's about recognizing the power you already have. After each class, she stayed to train alone, working through her own emotions with each punch, block and kick. Sometimes she cried as she moved through the katas, releasing months of pent-up feelings. Other times, she found a meditative calm that quieted the lingering doubts and questions. At home, Ariel and her mother began to have deeper conversations than ever before. One night, as they sat on the porch watching fireflies appear in the gathering dusk, her mother finally spoke about her own struggles. "I thought I was protecting you," she admitted. "After your father left, after we lost Grandpa, I wanted to shield you from how hard the world can be, so I taught you to be quiet, to work twice as hard, to never give them a reason." She shook her head. "I was wrong, Ariel. I was teaching you to make yourself small." "You were doing your best, Mom," Ariel said softly. "Maybe. But you taught me something these past months." Her mother took her hand. "You taught me that sometimes you have to stand up and take up space, even when it's scary, especially when it's scary." Ariel squeezed her mother's hand. "Grandpa taught me that, and you taught me the dignity and persistence to see it through." Meanwhile, Sophie Parker had transferred to a neighboring school to make a fresh start, but she and Ariel remained close. Sophie had discovered a passion for journalism and started a student podcast called Voices Unheard, inspired by Ariel's story and featuring interviews with students who had faced similar challenges. "I spent years being quiet because I was afraid," Sophie told Ariel over coffee one weekend. "Now I can't stop talking. Is that weird?" "Not at all," Ariel laughed. "You found your voice. That's something to celebrate." Bianca's transformation continued to surprise everyone. Having recognized her role in perpetuating a toxic culture, she channeled her social influence toward positive change. She started a campaign against cyberbullying, using her personal story as a cautionary tale about the consequences of going along with harassment. "I used to think popularity was everything," she confessed during a school assembly. "I judged my worth by who sat with me at lunch, by how many likes my posts got, by whether I was included in the right circles. It made me cruel to protect my status." She paused, her voice steadying. "But real leadership isn't about status. It's about doing what's right, even when, especially when, it costs you something." Not everyone was convinced by Bianca's apparent change of heart, but Ariel recognized the courage it took to publicly acknowledge past mistakes. When they passed in the hallway now, they exchanged nods of recognition, not quite friendship, but a mutual respect that would have seemed impossible months ago. Eli had undergone his own transformation. Once so shy he could barely make eye contact, he now attended regular classes at the dojo, gradually building confidence along with skill. Ariel watched with pride as he mastered basic forms, his movements becoming more fluid and assured with each session. The true test came one afternoon, when Eli witnessed a group of younger students mocking a freshman for his thick glasses and awkward manner. Without hesitation, Eli stepped between them. "That's enough," he said, his voice quiet but firm. "Find something better to do with your time." The older students looked stunned, partly by the intervention, partly by the change in someone they had once considered an easy target themselves. "When did you get so tough, Morris?" one of them challenged. "I'm not tough," Eli replied. "I just know what it feels like to be on the receiving end. So does everyone else who's ever been bullied. Maybe think about that." He walked away with the freshman, head high, shoulders back, the stance Ariel had taught him in his very first lesson. When he told her about it later, Ariel felt a surge of pride that rivaled anything she had accomplished herself. This was her grandfather's legacy in action, strength used to protect, not to dominate. As spring turned to early summer, a formal letter arrived from the Westbrook Academy Board of Trustees. Ariel opened it with her mother looking over her shoulder. "Dear Ms. Jackson, following a comprehensive review of the events leading to your suspension, the Board of Trustees formally acknowledges that Westbrook Academy failed in its duty to provide you with a safe and equitable educational environment. We offer our sincere apology for this institutional failure. The independent investigation has confirmed a pattern of discriminatory practices that we are committed to addressing through policy reforms, staff training, and ongoing community dialogue. Your courage in bringing these issues to light has created an opportunity for meaningful change that will benefit all students. We hope that you will continue to be part of the Westbrook community and the important transformation that is now underway. Sincerely, Dr. Eleanor Russell Chair, Board of Trustees. Ariel pinned the letter beside her grandfather's photo at the dojo, not as a trophy, but as a reminder that systems could change when brave individuals stood up to challenge them. That night, a memory surfaced from her childhood, her first belt ceremony. She had been 7 years old, trembling with excitement as her grandfather called her forward in front of the other students. He had tied the white belt around her waist with ceremonial care, then knelt to meet her eyes. "This is just the beginning," he had told her, his voice gentle but serious. "Now you learn not just how to protect yourself, but how to protect others." In the quiet of her room, Ariel realized she was finally fulfilling that promise. The media attention that had surrounded her story began to fade as summer approached, but occasionally journalists still reached out for interviews or comments. Book publishers sent inquiries about her memoir rights. Social media influencers wanted to collaborate on content about self-defense or standing up to bullying. Ms. Marks helped her navigate these requests, advising her to be selective and intentional. "Your story has power," she explained, "but it's your story to tell, in your way, when you're ready." Ariel declined most offers, choosing authenticity over fame. When she did speak publicly, she focused on systemic change rather than personal drama, on healing rather than reliving trauma. As the school year drew to a close, Ariel found herself walking through Westbrook's halls and realizing something had fundamentally shifted. There were no whispers as she passed, no uncomfortable stares, no pointed jokes just loud enough for her to hear. The silence that had once felt oppressive now felt peaceful, the silence of respect rather than exclusion. In Dr. Foster's office, during what would be one of their final regular sessions, Ariel reflected on this change. "I used to think silence meant safety," she said. "If I was quiet enough, invisible enough, I could avoid trouble. Now I understand that some kinds of silence protect the wrong things." "And what about now?" Dr. Foster asked. "What does silence mean to you now?" Ariel considered the question. "Now it means I've said what needs to be said. Now it means peace." The following September, Ariel stood at the main entrance of Westbrook Academy, watching freshmen arrive for their first day. As a senior and student mentor, she had volunteered to help new students navigate the campus and find their classes. "Ariel, Jackson?" A voice interrupted her thoughts. She turned to find Dr. Williams, the interim principal who had now been permanently appointed. "Good morning, Dr. Williams. I have someone I'd like you to meet." The principal gestured to a girl standing, slightly behind her, petite with close-cropped hair and eyes that darted nervously around the crowded entrance. "This is Zoe Bennett. She's new to Westbrook and a bit overwhelmed. I thought you might be the perfect mentor to help her adjust." Ariel recognized the look on Zoe's face, the careful assessment of unfamiliar territory, the calculation of potential threats and allies. It was a look she had worn herself not so long ago. "Hi, Zoe," she said warmly. "First day is always tough. Want to walk through your schedule together?" As they toured the campus, Ariel pointed out shortcuts between buildings, explained unwritten social rules, and introduced Zoe to friendly faces. Gradually, the younger girl's shoulders relaxed, and she began asking questions about classes and clubs. "I heard about what happened last year," Zoe said suddenly as they sat on a bench during lunch break. "About you standing up to those bullies." Ariel nodded, unsurprised. Her story had become part of Westbrook's unofficial history. "That's why I wanted to come here," Zoe continued. "My last school. It wasn't good. I thought maybe here would be different." "It is different," Ariel assured her. "Not perfect, but changing. And you can be part of that change." The cycle had begun again, but this time, Ariel was on the other side, not the one needing protection, but the one offering guidance and support. There was a rightness to it that felt like completing a circle her grandfather had begun drawing long ago. That weekend, the dojo hosted a grand opening ceremony to celebrate its official relaunch as the Jackson Community Center for Martial Arts and Leadership. The modest space had been expanded thanks to a grant from a local foundation, with a new meditation area, additional training space, and a small library of books on martial arts philosophy and conflict resolution. The ceremony drew a surprisingly large crowd: students from the dojo, Westbrook faculty and families, community members, and even a few local officials. Ms. Marks gave the opening speech, standing beneath a large portrait of Master Harold that now hung in the entrance. Master Jackson believed that martial arts was about more than physical technique, she told the assembled guests. It was about developing character, about finding the courage to stand for what's right, and about using strength to protect rather than dominate. That legacy lives on in his granddaughter, Ariel, and now in this center that will serve our community for years to come. When Ariel took the podium, she felt a momentary flutter of nerves, then a calm certainty as she looked out at the faces watching her mother, beaming with pride, Eli and Sophie in the front row, Dr. Williams and several Westbrook teachers, even Bianca standing quietly near the back. My grandfather used to say that a true martial artist never seeks conflict, but is never unprepared for it, she began. This center isn't just about teaching physical techniques. It's about building inner strength and moral clarity. It's about learning when to fight and when to walk away, and having the wisdom to know the difference. After the ceremony, as guests mingled and explored the renovated space, a new student approached Ariel. The girl was tall and athletic, with a confident swagger that immediately put Ariel on alert. "So you're the famous Ariel Jackson," she said, looking around dismissively. "I thought you'd be, I don't know, more impressive or something." Ariel recognized the challenge for what it was: a test, a probing for weakness. She could have responded with equal sharpness or pulled rank as the head instructor. Instead, she smiled. "Why don't you join us for class tomorrow? See for yourself what we're about." The next day, the girl, Melissa, arrived early, clearly ready to prove herself. When partnered exercises began, she used excessive force, trying to dominate her training partner. Ariel watched for a moment, then stepped in. "Let me show you something," she said, taking the partner's place. "Attack me however you want." Melissa launched forward with a powerful but uncontrolled strike. In a movement so smooth it seemed effortless, Ariel redirected the energy, using Melissa's own momentum to bring her gently but firmly to the mat. Before Melissa could process what had happened, Ariel was offering a hand to help her up. "Power without control is just wasted energy," Ariel explained, no hint of superiority in her voice. "Let me show you how to channel it effectively." By the end of class, Melissa's demeanor had shifted from confrontational to attentive. As students filed out, she lingered. "Same time Thursday?" she asked, trying to sound casual. Ariel nodded. "We'll be here." That evening, Ariel received unexpected news. An envelope arrived bearing the crest of Avalon University, one of the most prestigious schools in the country. Inside was an offer of a full scholarship to their martial arts and leadership program, a highly selective opportunity usually reserved for Olympic-level athletes. "They want me to start next fall," she told her mother, stunned. "Full tuition, room and board, everything." Her mother hugged her tightly. "Your grandfather would be so proud." Ariel felt a conflicting mix of excitement and hesitation. "But what about the dojo? I can't just leave after we've built it up." "The dojo will be here," her mother assured her. "We'll figure it out." Over the next few weeks, Ariel wrestled with the decision. The opportunity was extraordinary, but the thought of leaving the community she had helped build weighed heavily on her. She sought advice from Ms. Marks, from Dr. Foster, from her mother, all of whom encouraged her to accept. It was Eli who finally helped her see the bigger picture. He had been working on a special project for weeks, and one day after class, he presented her with a carefully wrapped package. "I made this for you," he said shyly. Inside was a framed drawing, beautifully rendered in Eli's distinctive style. It showed Ariel in a superhero-inspired costume, standing tall and confident. Below the image was a simple caption, "The Silent Storm." "This is how I see you," Eli explained. "Not just as a martial artist or a teacher, but as someone who changed things, someone who made a difference." He adjusted his glasses nervously. "I heard about Avalon. You should go." "But what about everything we've built here?" Ariel asked. "It doesn't end just because you go to college," Eli said with unexpected wisdom. "What you started will keep going. That's how legacy works." His words echoed in her mind as she made her decision. The following week, she accepted Avalon's offer, with plans to start the following fall. As her senior year progressed, Ariel worked to ensure the dojo would thrive in her absence. She trained 2 advanced students to help teach classes, established a scholarship fund for students who couldn't afford fees, and created detailed curriculum guides based on her grandfather's teachings. During a school assembly in late spring, Bianca surprised everyone by taking the stage to make an announcement. "As you know, I'll be stepping down as class president at the end of this term," she began. "After careful consideration, I'd like to nominate Ariel Jackson to complete the year." A murmur ran through the audience. Ariel, caught completely off guard, stared at Bianca in disbelief. "Over the past year," Bianca continued, "Ariel has demonstrated true leadership, not through popularity or social status, but through integrity and courage. I can think of no one better to guide Westbrook through its continuing transformation." When the principal called for a show of hands, the vote was overwhelmingly in favor. But when offered the position, Ariel did something that surprised many. She declined. "I'm honored by your trust," she told the assembly. "But leadership takes many forms, and I believe I can serve Westbrook best by continuing the work I'm already doing. Instead, I'd like to nominate Sophie Parker, whose dedication to amplifying unheard voices makes her ideal for this role." Sophie, who had returned to Westbrook for her senior year, was elected by an equally strong majority. At the podium, she looked nothing like the nervous girl who had slipped Ariel a flash drive in an empty classroom a year ago. Now she stood tall, her voice clear and confident as she addressed her peers. "A year ago, most of us were silent in the face of injustice," she began. "Some because we were afraid, some because we didn't know what to say, some because we benefited from the status quo. I was silent for all those reasons, and that silence enabled harm." She looked directly at Ariel. "But I learned that courage isn't the absence of fear. It's the decision to act even when you're terrified. It's choosing to speak when silence would be easier. It's standing up when everyone else is sitting down." In the final weeks of the school year, Ariel spent more time at the dojo, savoring the space that had been her sanctuary and her strength. One evening, after all the students had left, she practiced one last complete kata, the most advanced form her grandfather had taught her. As she moved through the complex sequence of strikes, blocks, and stances, she felt a profound connection, not just to her grandfather, but to generations of practitioners who had passed down these movements through centuries. The sunlight streamed through the high windows, bathing her in golden light as she completed the final movement and bowed deeply to the portrait of Master Harold. "Thank you," she whispered. The following week brought graduation and the bittersweet awareness that one chapter was ending as another began. Ariel watched as students of all ages filed into the dojo for the last class she would teach before leaving for college. Eli was there, now a purple belt and occasional assistant instructor. Zoe had joined after Ariel's mentorship helped her find her confidence. Even Melissa, once so confrontational, now helped newer students with patient attention. As Ariel led them through warm-up exercises, she saw the legacy her grandfather had begun now living in each of them: the discipline, the respect, the quiet confidence, the moral clarity. They moved in unison, a community bound by shared values rather than social status or background. Later, as dusk fell and she locked the dojo for the night, Ariel remembered her grandfather's words from so long ago. "You don't fight to prove something, you fight to protect, and when the world finally listens, you speak softly but with power." She had lived those words through the hardest year of her life, She had discovered her own voice, not loud or angry, but clear and resolute. She had learned when to fight and when to speak, when to stand firm and when to extend a hand. Most importantly, she had helped others find their strength. As she walked home through the quiet streets, Ariel felt a deep sense of completion. The journey that had begun with isolation and fear had transformed into connection and purpose. Whatever challenges awaited at Avalon and beyond, she would face them with the same disciplined strength and moral clarity that had carried her through Westbrook. The silent storm had passed, leaving a changed landscape in its wake, and in that change, hope for something better had taken root and begun to grow. Have you ever wondered what silent strength truly looks like until the moment it's finally unleashed? Like this video, if Ariel's journey moved you, and subscribe for more powerful stories of hidden courage finally finding its voice.